What's up, Mr. Glover? This is Owen. As you can see, the thing I'm going to be teaching is the unit circle. It's a pretty easy concept. It's basically just memorization. I hope my phone has enough storage to take this video, so let's get started. Okay. Alright. So with the unit circle, there are three things you need to know. You need to know the degree of the angle, in radians, and the unit points for each angle. So let's start with the radians, since that's the most difficult part, the part that most people have trouble understanding. So there's three types of radians. There's a pi/6, which is this first angle right here. There's the pi/4, which is that middle angle, and there's the pi/3. But if you think about it, pi/3 is just 2 pi/6, so that's how I memorize it. So I go 1 pi/6, 2 pi/6, which is pi/3. So basically all you need to count is the pi/6 and the pi/4, right? And for these angles, like this one, this one, this one, this one, you can count pi/4 or pi/6. It's really up to you. So like if you went 1 pi/4, 2 pi/4, you would get pi/2. Or if you want 1 pi/6, 2 pi/6, 3 pi/6, you still get pi/2. Right, so then let's see. And from here, you would go, so 1 pi/6, 2 pi/6, 3 pi/6, 4 pi/6, which simplifies down to 2 pi/3. Then you go, since all the pi/4s are always in the middle, so this is pi/4, so if you want 1 pi/4, 2 pi/4, this would be 3 pi/4, and this is another 6, so you went 4 pi/6, this is 5 pi/6, then 6 pi/6, which is just the same as pi, and pi is always equal to 180 degrees. So pi/2, which is just 180/2, it's the same thing as 90 degrees. Pi/6, 180/6 is just 30 degrees. 180/4, 45 degrees. 180/3, 60 degrees. 2 times 180/3, 120. 3 times pi/4, 135. And then 5 times 180/6, 150. Alright, and so now let's continue with the radians. So we had 6 pi/6 here, so we have 7 pi/6 here. 7 pi/6. Then we go to a 4 because it's in the middle, so we went 4 pi/4 here. So it would be 5 pi/4. Then we went 7 pi/6, so this would be 8 pi/6, which is just 4 pi/3. Then we would go 9 pi/6, which is just 3 pi/2. And then 10 pi/6, which is 5 pi/3. And then we go to another 4, so if we add 5 pi/4, 6 pi/4, this would be 7 pi/4, and another 6. So if we had 10 pi/6, this would be 11 pi/6. And then this, if you go all the way around the unit circle, it's always 2 pi. Since pi is equal to 180, 2 times 180, 360 degrees. But if you were starting here, you'd start at 0, 0. And so let's finish up these degrees right here. So 7 times 180/6, 210. 5 times 180/4, 225. 4 times 180/3, 240. 3 times 180/2, 270. 5 times 180/3 is 300. 7 times 180/4, 315, 11, 10, 180 over 6, 330 degrees. So now, let's go to the units on the graph, right? So, the domain and range of the unit circle is -1 to 1, -1 to 1. So if you go out 1 to the right and don't go up 0, your points would be 1, 0. And then if you go up 1, then not left to right 0, it'd be 0, 1, and then -1, 0,